Today we're going to talk about gender.
Fuck! It's real!
As of this year, queer kid stuff is becoming a reality in our education system. Children as young as 5 will be learning all about gender, and we found the teaching documents. I'm gonna hand this first document over to Tailed so that he can mansplain it to you.
Thanks, wench. To begin, the way that Scottish education works is through a system called the Curriculum for Excrement, Excellence, or CFE. It is based on the Finnish education system and was introduced in Scotland in 2010 to wide and continual criticism, with attainment levels consistently falling since. Essentially, teachers are given experiences and outcomes, E's and O's, or learning outcomes, LO's, that are vague as hell and are invited to be as creative and holistic as possible in achieving said outcomes, with very little guidance. Trust me, I trained as a teacher in this environment. Here, the learning outcome is, I recognise that we have similarities and differences, but are all unique, followed by a reference number, HWB1-47A, which is the health and well-being category. So far, so innocuous. I personally wouldn't include it as a lesson in itself, although CFE doesn't necessitate that it be so. LOs can and often are covered as part of a wider lesson. That we are all similar yet different is something I would instill in young children as a matter of course, when relevant. For instance, if a situation arose where someone's differences were highlighted. However, this particular LO is specific to a lesson around gender diversity. The learning intentions for the lesson are: children learn about themselves, what makes them unique, and the idea of diversity. Children learn about what is meant by the term gender. Gender stereotypes, or gender-biased expectations, are questioned. Bearing in mind this is for first level, which is children aged 4 to 7. I have no problem with starting a very basic discussion with young children about which toys they prefer, that it's okay for girls to like cars and boys to like dolls, but that is as far as it's necessary to go. The success criteria for the lesson is as follows. Children show respect for others. Children understand that how they look, how they behave, or their aspirations should not be limited by their gender. Again, I'm not too fazed by this. Reaffirming that children can aspire to whatever they want, provided they work hard at it, is something I would happily instill into a class. Next is a series of supporting resources. This is a narrative with ideas for questions and discussion. There are images or words to match the story. The text here is provided to support you to deliver the key messages, but use the text as you see fit. It is a guide, not a script. Pause, chat, explore ideas and understanding as you go. This could be a whole class activity or a small group approach. CFE in a nutshell. Of course, they say use it as you see fit until you get inspected by the government and they'll tell you what you're meant to do. Image of mum and newborn. A doctor says what sex a baby is when they are born. When a baby is born, parents are told what sex their baby is. A doctor looks at the baby's body and decides if the baby has a vulva, they say the baby is a female or girl baby, or if the baby has a penis and testes, they say it is a male or boy baby. Mostly this is easy for the doctor to decide, but for some babies it isn't so clear, and the doctor might decide the baby is intersex. Hold the fuck up. Is it appropriate to be talking about genitalia with children this age? I mean, if you ask a room full of kids what the differences between boys and girls are, and they say boys have short hair and girls have long hair, you can challenge that. If they bring up genitalia, then there are ways of discussing it. The teacher doesn't bring it up with the kids. Kids this age cannot comprehend more than superficial differences between one another. Maybe at third level when the children are getting sex ed. Also, did you assume that it's a mum and not a dad? After all, dads can have babies too, apparently. After we are born, people start to see us and think about us as a boy or a girl, even if they don't know whether we have a vulva or a penis. This is when being a boy or a girl is called our gender. No. Just no. Kids can't grasp this. Even if you refer to your child as a girl and make it wear a dress, but it has a penis, it will still likely have a natural inclination towards toys with mechanical parts rather than ones with faces. That is biological. No amount of wishy-washy social justice will change that. Ask, when you see a baby with their clothes on, are there any clues as to whether it's a boy or a girl? Acknowledge and explain that even colour of clothes has come to mean something. explained that although some people say pink for girls, blue for boys, in fact a long time it used to be the other way around, so really it's just something that's made up. There's not really a problem with this, but the insinuation is that gender is also something that's made up. Not that 5-year-olds would get that subtlety. Is now a good time to say that what these kids need are help with things that will actually help them in their daily lives, like reading, writing, spelling, maths, stuff that will get them jobs in the future, stuff based on merit. Teach kids that hard work pays off, that meritocracy is more important than what's between their legs. Explain that sometimes people say, a boy can't wear that, or a girl can't wear that, or oh, only boys can do that, or only girls can do that. Ask, have you ever heard someone say such a thing? How does it make you feel if someone tries to say, you can't do that because you're a girl or a boy? Again, there's nothing really wrong with discussing this, but a simple discussion when a relevant situation arises is far more preferable than making a big deal out of it, an entire lesson in fact. After some conversation, explain that today and in other lessons, the children are learning that each of us is special and unique, and so each of us will be able to say who we are. We can be whatever kind of girl or boy we want to be. Why lie to kids? I realise a lot of kids these days are coming from households where they aren't told they're special or even loved, but there are a lot who are constantly being told they're special. What effect does that have on kids? Children should be told they are valued the same in the classroom, not that they're special. If everyone is special, then no one is special. Introduce along these lines. Let's play a game. I am going to show you some pictures and you can tell me if you think this is something a boy can do or a girl can do, or both boys and girls can do. Slide 1. Who can bake a cake? Slide 2. Both boys and girls baking. Slide 3. Who can play football? Slide 4. Both girls and boys playing football. Slide 5. Who can build with Lego? Slide 6. Both boys and girls building with Lego. Slide 7. Who can play with technology? Slide 8. Both boys and girls play with technology. Or, bear with me here, you can do all of these activities with the entire class. Leave no one out. Then it will all seem normal to them. Encourage children to do what they want to do, or to try new things. You can't dictate that girls have to play football, or that boys have to do baking. Christ, you'd think by the way you're talking that we have segregated activities and separate school entrances for boys and girls. Anyway, doesn't all of this reinforce the gender binary? There then follows a similar slide about who can feel happy, worried, who can cry, etc. I have no real issues with this, except that personally I'd bring it up if the situation demanded it, like if a boy was being made fun of for crying. Then there's another slide about what jobs men and women can't have. And of course, they can both have any jobs they want. Again, if the situation arose, that's when it's time to have that conversation. There's then a list of relevant stories, no doubt choice picks from the socially just. And speaking of gender transitions, this is a transition to the next section, which is done by Discordia, who is of the opposite gender to me.
Cheers, Tailed. Wait, did you just assume my gender? Police Scotland are on their way, my friend. So, the next set of learning materials are aimed at children around ages 8 to 11, who in fairness, at this point, might at least know that there are differences between boys and girls. The learning intentions for this level are: children learn about gender, children consider stereotyping, children view themselves as unique individuals. So the first and third points are probably, to an extent, more suitable for this age range. The kids have likely noticed that there are differences between their classmates, and are aware that there are some differences between boys and girls. And the latter end of this age group are probably approaching the age where teachers would normally be introducing a bare bones version of sex ed anyway. That second point, however, jumps out a little bit. Why would they be teaching stereotyping before children have even learned about the biological differences that account for some of these stereotypes? This is not actually going to encourage the children to challenge gender stereotypes and think about whether there might be any basis in reality to these stereotypes. By design, this is just going to hammer into them that stereotypes are wrong because they have no data to compare it to. Following on from that, the success criteria is: children describe themselves positively, their unique attributes and interests. Children give examples of and can challenge gender stereotypes. Children understand and accept diversity amongst their peers. Again, the first criteria point doesn't really ring any major alarm bells, although I think this might be less suitable as a lesson plan and more just something to address if and when it comes up naturally within the class. The third point, well, it really depends what they mean by diversity. But, given the context, let's assume they're talking about diversity of interests and attributes, and not the topic of enforcing diversity into spaces. Making this assumption, this is probably something that kids at this age will be able to grasp. Although, again, does it really need an entire lesson rather than just being addressed when it comes up? Once again, it's point 2 that really jumps out at us here. Children can give examples of and challenge gender stereotypes. This is pure gender studies nonsense at this point, and there can be no reasonable expectation that children of this age can fully understand and challenge gender stereotypes. Yes, they might be able to recite whatever you tell them to, but they cannot challenge what they do not yet understand. The expectation here is that they will simply absorb and recite whatever gender studies talking points are covered in the lesson, without the context or the understanding of the biology that they are supposed to be challenging. The sole aim here seems to be to teach them this before they have the capability or the knowledge to question or refute it. And to me, that feels very sinister in nature, given that when they've tried pushing it onto adults who have this information to compare it to, it's often dismissed. And this feels very much like they've set their sights onto an age group who doesn't know any better, and so won't argue with them. So we start the lesson with some lovely slides. The first slide, we pretty much have a repeat of the first slide from the document that Tail went over, telling us that when we are born, the doctor decides our sex based on what genitalia we have. I'm mostly just going to echo the points that he made on that. Although these kids are slightly older, some of them will still be as young as 8. Back when I was at school, we didn't even cover the basic genital anatomy until we were about to leave for high school. And so at 8, this passing statement about genitalia really wouldn't have made much sense to us. I also find the use of the word decide on this topic to be concerning. Why are we teaching children that the doctor decides their sex? As if he thought to himself, I think I'll make this one a boy. Does that mean the doctor also decides what weight or ethnicity we are? Of course not. He simply observes and documents it. Moving on to the second slide, we find out today that we're talking about gender. It tells us, after we are born, people start to see us and think about us as a boy or a girl, even if they don't know whether we have a vulva or a penis. This is when being a boy or a girl is called our gender. People might think they know our gender because of the clothes we wear, or how we behave, or the things we like to do. Whoa there, hang on a second. Children at this age are acting purely on their biology and on their own personal experiences. And yet, somehow, people are managing to work out their gender, and in most cases correctly, by the way they behave and how they present themselves. The only time that kids this age wouldn't be acting based on their biology is if an adult, say maybe a teacher with an ideological agenda, tried to change that artificially. The next few slides are very much a repeat of what we saw earlier in the video with Tailed, talking about how boys and girls can play with the same toys, engage in the same interests and activities if they like. I only really want to echo his thoughts here that there is nothing wrong with having a discussion on this topic if the need arises, but it's probably not worth an entire lesson. Kids will generally play with whatever takes their fancy if left to their own devices. They provide us with a video at this point in the lesson plan, which mostly just drives home the points made in the slides about toys being for everyone. They do make one point not mentioned in the slides that I think is worth addressing though.
Boys' toys tend to be around technology, action, construction and science, and girls' toys much more about creativity, caring and actually care for appearance. They encourage different skills and different interests that can affect their schooling careers, their school interests and even their future jobs.
So the implication here is that the toys, which for some completely unknown reason are evilly marketed towards specific genders, are the cause of different interests and career choices of children as they grow into adults. It completely and deliberately ignores the fact that toy makers and marketing campaigners want to make sales, as many sales as possible. Why on earth would they want to put a whole gender off buying a specific product? There is no way, of course, in her mind, that it's far more likely that research and gender preferences have shown them time and time again who their primary market is, telling them who is most likely to have interest in what product and thus who they'll make more money marketing for. No, that would be silly, of course. It's the shops and toy makers conspiring to keep girls out of STEM and barefoot in the kitchen making sandwiches where they belong. The slides continue by moving on to stereotyping. The next one reads, a stereotype is an idea that people might have about a group of people based on how they look on the outside. When you stereotype people, this is wrong, because what is on the outside is only a small part of a person. Sometimes, what you think about a group of people might be true for some of them, but to say that they are all something, and especially something bad, then that's a stereotype. Well, I have to say, I'm not sure where they got that specific definition from, as they don't actually bother to cite it. But stereotypes are not only based on how someone looks on the outside. They can be based on any number of things, and are not always necessarily completely inaccurate. The Merriam-Webster definition, I think, describes it better, specifically when it talks about general patterns and oversimplification. Stereotypes don't usually come from nowhere, and are more often than not based on some kind of noticeable pattern. Now, by all means, some of them are very outdated or inaccurate once you take a closer look at them, and some people will always be exceptions to the pattern, as is the joy of being individuals. But in the context of males and females having, on average, different interests, we've seen this over generations of children and adults and the choices that they tend towards making. Now, by all means, we shouldn't say that because someone is a male, they have to like this or they have to do that activity, but that doesn't mean that they aren't more likely to do so based on patterns of observed behaviors. This slide seems to be an ideological definition rather than an actual dictionary definition, and only serves to teach kids as young as possible that pointing out noticeable differences in biology is harmful. But what more should we expect from an ideology that would want to see other people arrested for pointing out the harmful stereotype that women don't normally have penises? And to sandwich it all nicely back in with something slightly more sane, because we want any parent skimming over this to think this is a nice wholesome lesson, we have a slide here with a big smiley face, telling us that we're all unique and it's okay to be who we want to be. Aww. And that's why we say, in this class, we are all individuals, different, unique, and special. And when everyone is special, no one's special. But you thought that's where our class gets off the hook? Nothing on choosing their gender this time? Oh no, my friends. That gets its own lesson. And maybe we'll dive into it in another video.
I just hope you English people aren't getting too smug. This is coming to a school near you.